Welcome to the final class meeting of our university lecture course called The New School Century. Mark and I are extremely grateful for the support we've received for this class, and we're also gratified by the interest it has spawned. A few thanks are in order to the Provost's Office for an Innovations in Education grant to digitize the early scrapbooks of the school, and the Student Senate for its contribution to digitize audio tapes from a race crisis conference. To the librarians and archivists who helped realize these digitization projects, including Carmen Hendershot, Wendy Shear, Jenny Schwadish, Alan Jones, and Jen Larson. And to Dean David Scobie and Pam Tillis and Francisco Tezon for their support of today's town hall meeting. And finally, we could not have conducted this course without the crucial contributions of Patrick Dempsey, a recent alum of Lang College, who created and oversaw the class website, and our two fabulous teaching assistants, Alexis Deonde and Robin Mueller, doctoral students in philosophy at NSSR. So that list already suggests the wide range of the university community that has been a part of this course. With the exception of Manus and the Drama School, we have representatives directly in the class from every other division of the university. Assignments also aimed to reach out to many parts of the community, particularly through short biographies of people once associated with the school, from Marlon Brando to Charles Tilley and Spiros Zakos, and especially through interviews conducted by the students with alumni, staff, and faculty throughout the school. This final assignment then builds on our semester-long conversation. We've asked students to use the almost completed first century of the university to contemplate the beginning of its second. If the university is to remain vibrant, relevant, and strong, we need to heed the voices of our students, what they are seeking from education, and what kind of world they intend to make. So for their energy, vision, and concern, we thank our students most of all. And a couple of practical details. You should have a collection of outlines for each of the groups. One is stapled together that includes most of them, and then there are separate handouts for the ones that came in just a tad late. And if you don't have them, maybe you'll be able to share with somebody next to you. There are also a few more remaining on the front table outside the door. Finally, for the students who will be speaking, we need to speak into the microphone directly. Everything needs to be captured by the microphone to be heard on the videotape. And of course, this will go into the archives. Thank you.
And this is Julia Foulkes, by the way, my co-teacher. I'm Mark Larrimore. We're very excited about this. We've seen these projects as they're emerging, but we are excited to see the final form they take. I have the happy task of introducing them and the thankless task of shutting them down if they go down over 8 minutes. So without further ado, the first is the group Bridging the Gaps, 7 Schools, 1 University, and Peyton Franzen and Carmen Ortiz will be presenting.
Hello, welcome. My name is Peyton. And I'm Carmen, and we're both fashion students at Parsons.
The title of our presentation is Bridging the Gap, 7 Schools, 1 University. What sets the New School apart from other universities is what we value.
We'd first like to mention our high values of academic free thinking. In 1919, the New School started in protest, defying the head of Columbia University to create a learning environment that promoted free thinking. The value of protest and free thinking is still alive today through student involvement in the wider social issues of the world. Just last week, the current New School president sent an email to the students pointing out that we have the right to protest in support of economic equality. And although he reminded us that going to and participating in class is likely the best process for improving social justice, his message still encouraged us to make that choice. This sets the New School apart from other more traditional schools.
As students, we value the New School's unique educational experience with specialized courses defined by the student body's needs and wants in relation to present issues and needs in society. Though not all of us are here for the same degree or program, all students can expect to have a very personal experience by the variety of courses offered in each division and the majority of which have small class sizes. We came to the New School not only because of these small class sizes, but because of the emphasis on social research in regards to learning. Social research is essentially examining social issues in manner one would usually approach traditional scientific research and problem solving. The idea is to remove social issues from the confines of popular prejudices in order to examine them without bias to better understand their cause and effect. Modern social issues are examined through field research and historical assessment in order to reach organized thought regarding the matter. This heterodox process of examination and belief in firsthand research is essential to the New School's founding philosophy. This unique academic engagement is enhanced by the New School's location in the heart of New York City.
The New School is very significant because of its relationship with the city, using it as an extended educational resource. The New School also recognizes the surplus of information given by the city and supports the utilization of those resources both in and out of the classroom. At its inception, the New School founders asserted, "This is the hour for experiment, and New York is the place because it is the greatest social science laboratory in the world." Being considered a progressive university, the New School continues to remain engaged with the problems of the world, and New York is the best place to do so. Our group developed a mission statement with a vision of what we would like the school to look like in 10 years, and this is what we came up with. The purpose of the New School is to support academic free thinking among individuals of all backgrounds in order to foster future collaboration between multiple disciplines to create and achieve new resolutions of our present and future world issues.
We must uphold this mission. With 7 very different schools making up the New School and a variety of degree programs offered in each school, there are potentially a lot of opportunities for New School students to collaborate across divisions. Yet at this time, the New School is not taking advantage of creating and promoting this collaboration through a greater integration among the different schools of the university. We must continue the effort of unifying the divisions through collaboration between students from different programs in order to encourage new ways of thinking and looking at subjects by bridging divisions rather than dissolving them. This can be done through more class offerings that will allow all students to use their varied skills in order to examine and potentially create solutions to today's issues. This collaboration can also be aided through a reorganization of advising so that we can be aware of and encouraged to take classes that allow us to interact and learn with other members of the university. We need transparency of the system and informed adult leaders to help us figure out logistical solutions to further our education.
We also think an integration of traditional university amenities would also be very valuable to the personal well-being of students, such as a look at restructuring the card system in order to consolidate uses of student accounts and stronger promotion of student social interaction in a space that allows for that. Along with that, we still want to continue the historical emphasis on free thinking.
We came here because of these values, and we hope in the future that these values continue to be upheld in new ways that are consistent to the time, that students can say in complete confidence that they go to the New School.
That was terrific. Thank you very much. The next is called YOLO, You Only Live Once. And the 3 speakers are Gabriella Campfield, Anthony Casario, and Christina Liu.
Hi, I'm Anthony.
And I'm Christina.
And I'm Gabriella.
So we based our presentation around the phrase, abbreviated YOLO, you only live once. It essentially means you gotta live your life to the fullest, especially the next few years at the New School. So hopefully our proposals will be heard. So the mission statement. The New School is a university of academics and visual arts whose mission is to educate students who aspire to be professionals in their related field. We provide of all degrees at all levels, as well as resources to enrich campus life experience. We provide opportunities for innovation and experimentation to ensure quality of all areas in education.
With our proposal, we discussed how we think the New School should have more classes other than the ULEC classes to get a feel for some of the other divisions. Like, I was a Lang student, and all the other kids in my group were Parsons students, and it was interesting to see the difference between our school structures, but as well as how both of them can benefit from one another. So we discussed that we should have more classes, and that there should be much more of more campus events, because we didn't feel as if there's more gatherings. Yeah, there's events, but we felt as if they were specified to the certain schools and not as a combination. And we thought that there should be alumni visits, and it should be offered to all schools, not only like Parsons or Maines or classes. And we thought that we should get a perspective of how it is to work outside of the school, bring people in who are in the industry, and also allow the kids from all the schools to be able to attend these events.
And as far as the school's engagement with global issues is concerned, there has obviously been a huge engagement with the sustainable design and environmental issues over the last 8 years with the creation of the SDR in 2006, and also with the launch of the environmental studies program in 2008. But as a group, we have discussed that in addition to the environmental issues, we would suggest that the school engages with problems around the world that don't actually have to do with the environment at all, like helping the poor or, giving back in, the New York community to underprivileged people. And these are issues, that we don't have to create a program necessarily to solve, but it could be something as simple as, creating volunteer work for the different programs that each program could, help a specific thing that has to do with their major. We just think that that might be a better, in addition to obviously continuing the sustainable design movement at the school, reaching out to underprivileged in the community or around the world would be a really good suggestion for the future.
Our proposal, basically, we surrounded a lot of it by the events and getting the students and people outside of the school and the faculty kind of more intertwined with one another, because we felt there was a specific division between each schools, and even in the majors there's such a division. And we felt that since learning the history of our school and how the new school started and how Parsons became part of the new school, there shouldn't be this type of division between all of us. We should all be one. So, yeah.
And one more thing to add, that all the Parsons kids who take courses at Lang, they should not be required to in order to graduate, but more intertwined, as we mentioned before, because I interviewed Judy Abate. She's a Parsons alumni and also an award-winning book designer. So during the 80s, she took a literature course at the New School because she knew she wanted to be a book designer, and in order to become a better book designer, she needs to understand the story. So we hope to see in the future, maybe somehow a designer could take an academic course and use it for their career.
I think that's all.
Thanks very much. The next presentation, and it's one of the ones that has a separate handout, which hopefully you found, is called Challenges of the Past, Anticipations for the Future of the New School. And the presentation will be made by Francisco Flores and Margaret Karzawiski. I should have asked.
Hi, my name is Margaret Karzuski,
I am Francisco Flores.
and our presentation is called Challenges of the Past and Aspirations for the Future of the New School. And I will start the presentation off by our proposed mission statement. The New School is a progressive institution of higher learning dedicated to a diverse selection of academic studies. With a tradition based in free thought, the university was founded on a strong liberal philosophy and continues to operate with these beliefs. This student-directed curriculum creates a greater level of responsibility and control, which in turn attracts a more mature and serious-minded student. Located in New York City, the campus offers students a unique setting in the world's greatest urban center. The New School's outlook and approach to the education is to address the challenges and concerns of our time through the creation of an environment that encourages students to widen their approach and vision to solve the greatest challenges society might encounter. Some of our key values that we wanted to point out through both our experience, the readings we had in class, as well as private interviews we had with faculty, past and present, as well as alumni. The diversity within the student body and faculty, not only internationally, but also in viewpoints, which the Executive Dean for the New School for Public Engagement, David Scooby, states his approval for the diversity. Yet I am especially proud of the range and daring with which our faculty and students live. Experienced professional faculty who bring an outside knowledge of the working world to their students. From the original proposal for the new school, which stated that we need teachers who have a firsthand knowledge of the world of actual endeavor and are prepared to apply their several specialties to the current issues of the day, which is still true today. The new school is adaptable and it experiences change many times, which prepares its students for the real world. As stated by Alan Tate in Notes Toward a Philosophy of Design Education, to expose the student to the myriad approaches possible in solving the problems of our environment. And when asked about the many changes the new school faces, Associate Dean of Parsons, Pamela Klein, explains that change is necessary and natural. The new school's location in the middle of New York City and experiencing all it has to offer makes a positive impact on the classrooms. And the new school's last value is their progressive ideas. In an interview with David West, a faculty from the provost office, who has been with the school since 2007, has commented on the Occupy Wall Street event. It has been a positive influence on the school. It opened challenges of communication between central administration and the student-faculty community.
So the experience and knowledge all students should have. One will get the knowledge necessary to enter the working world upon graduating because of the new school employees, instructors straight from the professional world. Within the classroom, students will find a very diverse student and faculty body, much like the city outside. Students will be constantly interacting with people unlike themselves, and their minds will expand simply by socializing. The city's wide range of cultures and interests coincide with the array of courses and that students at the new school can choose from. With small classes, school-wide, serious-minded and mature students can create connections with their instructors and build up a personal responsibility for their own education. The New York City Greenwich Village location of the new school also inevitably places the school in the center of global events and necessitates the diversity of cultures and beliefs within the student community. People continue to come to the school from all over the world, regardless of their race, language, or religion, and they all gather within the same city. So for the next 10 years, it seems to be a general consensus in the student population that there is not enough integration and collaboration among the programs and the different schools. We should also seek to implement integration and collaboration among the student population for the improvement of human relations for the future generations through collaborative, month-long workshops, a space where students can bring the skills that they are perfecting in their majors to projects in conjunction to other students with different skill sets. It is imperative that the new school finds a way in the next decade to adapt to the needs of the changing student population that very likely will be a working urban population. And also, most of the core classes, if not all, are scheduled during the morning or early afternoon, leaving little selection of classes available during the evening, making it very difficult for the working young adult who also deserves an education. The obvious exception being the courses offered by the former division called the School of General Studies and currently the New School for Social Research. We should count among our goals a future commitment to more harmony between the adult and undergraduate communities. The education received must reflect on the past, but also address the concerns and issues of the future. Our determination in this, in order to keep akin to the founding ideologies of the university, the most important goal for the new school in the following 10 years as a whole, more than a central library that will be home to the archive of the new school, will be the creation and implementation of new teaching methods and ways of communication that will reach students in a more engaging and meaningful way.
Thank you very much. The next presentation is called The Lost Century and the Next Decade at the New School. And it'll be presented by Brianna Lyle and Susan Schell.
Oh goodness, that's close. Okay. Hi there. We are happy to be here and speak with you about our unique university, as we have been learning so much about it over the past semester. When coming here, we had a set idea about what this university's values were, who had paved the road for us, and what these founders had in mind when they created the new school. However, what we have come to find through this course is that many of these histories are inaccurate and much more complicated than we had thought. This isn't a bad thing. It turns out this university is way more interesting than we had imagined. My name is Brianna Lyle, and I'm a sophomore at Eugene Lang in the writing department.
And I'm Susan Schell, a junior at Parsons in the Fine Arts Department. Helping us with this project were Kyle Haves, Neha Bhatia, Nicole Louie, and Kaushik Mishra. We have outlined for you today what we think to be our core values at this university, what all new school undergrads should experience while here, and what we think should be included in the new school's development over the next 10 years. Because we only have 8 minutes, please follow along with your handouts for clarification if necessary.
Here we go. These are our 4 core values that we see for the new school. 1. John Dewey, a prominent founder in NSSR and pragmatist, believed in practice and theory in the education system. We believe a new school value should include theory and practice into all classes, whether they be Parsons design classes, music classes at the jazz school, or literature classes at Lang. We believe knowledge should come from doing and not from the back of a lecture room. We call this value pragmatic theory of education. 2. We strive to develop a culture at the new school that not only remains professional, but also allows students to think critically about the world around them so that they can answer the questions we face in today's societies. Whether this be design, philosophy, or religious studies, we believe that Callinism, the principle that we live in a multiple world, multiple nations, race, art, religion, and philosophy, should be essential to the new school. We call this value developing culture. 3. At the new school, we aim for a student-informed university. We see that some institutions have perverted the strife for intellectualism and have replaced it with simple theory-based and informal methods of teaching to train, perhaps a skilled but uninformed educated class. Where freedom to both learn theory and practice have been replaced with one and not the other, we find it essential to the new school to keep a line of communication open between faculty, administration, and students. We call this value academic freedom. 4. Artists such as Aaron Copland, Doris Humphreys, and Bernice Abbott have taught and made major contributions not only to the new school, but to the art community as a whole. The new school has been a pioneer in embracing the arts, as evident by our current art collection, as well as our acceptance of progressive dancers, musicians, and artists when no other institution accepted their progressive forms of art. We seek for a combination of both the study of art as well as the practice of art. We call this value arts appreciation.
We believe that by attending the new school, every student should have the opportunity to experience each of our core values within their educational pursuits. For instance, our pragmatic theory of education value should propel students to take internships, allowing for a real-world application to their studies. We also believe that the faculty members should maintain professional careers outside of the university, as well as their positions within the university. Our developing culture value should reflect our large international student population at the new school. As well, we should encourage students to experience the world through our study abroad opportunities. Our academic freedom value should allow students to be more involved in the details of their own academic pursuits. For instance, students should be able to vote on major decisions within the university, such as a new building plan on campus, changes to classes or curriculum, and matters concerning the students directly. Our arts appreciation value should continue to allow the artist series at the new school, expand the university's art collections, and continue to hire professional artists as professors. We also believe students should have more access to the new school's resources regarding the arts. For instance, a student at any division should be able to easily incorporate an arts class into his or her schedule.
Our vision for the next decade is for the new school to grow in these following ways: transparency among faculty, administration, and students, the reconstruction of advisors, the organization within all administrative departments, more interaction between all schools within the university, and finally, more campus space within Greenwich Village and Brooklyn. Transparency among faculty, administration, and students is a suggestion we feel is necessary in a school that so heavily relies on its students to lead discussion and become the movers and shakers of our time. Transparency means that students and faculty have say via voting in what administrative decisions the university feels necessary. The reconstruction of advisors is a suggestion we feel necessary at a university in which not only the current advising board is weak, but in a university where students rely so heavily on professors and advisors for guidance and navigation in difficult career paths such as writing, visual arts, and music. Our suggestion includes matching each student to an advisor who has a similar career path, available meeting times that match a student's, and advisors who are knowledgeable on the department their advisee is currently enrolled in. We are suggesting a university-wide organization within all administrative departments. Students, parents, and faculty should be able to get their questions answered without the worry of being redirected or disconnected. More interaction between schools within the university is a step that the new school has already attempted in previous years with the relogoing of all our schools. However, more than a name is necessary to truly unite these schools. Students should be able to take classes within other departments or schools entirely, as well as have access to other buildings that are not only in their own departments. Lastly, we are suggesting more campus space within Greenwich Village and Brooklyn. In our previous suggestions, we have called for more interaction between schools and a university-wide organization. We believe more campus space is necessary to achieve these goals. Not only would more campus space allow for these suggestions, but it would also allow for more community among the new school students.
With all of these principles in mind, the mission of the new school is not simply to be a place of higher education, but an institution that is continually progressing and educating students and faculty cooperatively as comrades in the pursuit of a higher intellectual consciousness. The new school is a university in that it educates its students for a path beyond the classroom. Nonetheless, it is also a social and artistic playground where the curious and conscious come together to discover how the world operates around them and in turn how the students themselves operate within it. Thanks.
Brooklyn, here we come. Our next presentation, New School History, Past, Present, and Future, will be presented by all members of this group. Rena Grobe, Catherine Kenny, Sarah Mayer, Inbal Newman, and David Vudan. And I forgot to say before, nobody's actually gone up to the 8 minutes, but if you approach, I'll hold up 3 fingers for 3 minutes, 2 minutes, 1. Right.
In keeping with the theme that we have chosen of past, present, and future of the new school, we've composed an outline of suggestions for an improved university. We've created a mission statement that we feel communicates the new school's core values. The new school's mission is to foster and encourage progressive learning and critical thinking by providing a space where artists, intellectuals, and musicians can come together to think and produce in innovative ways. We offer classes led by professionals who are active in their respective fields to build a bridge between education and experience. By harnessing the diverse setting of New York City, the new school encourages people of different backgrounds to create, collaborate, and inspire.
The new school is made up of 7 different colleges. The different colleges harbor students from different backgrounds who bring to the table various skills and interests. This diversity is something that the new school has valued historically and continues to pride itself on presently. Alvin Johnson welcomed the Orozco and Benton murals by stating, "Although the new school had been set up originally to teach the political and social sciences to mature men and women, it had soon become evident that academic specialization in a single field would not answer the intellectual requirements of its students, who desired also instruction in philosophy and psychology, literature, music, art, and architecture." Johnson suggests that a student's education is not complete until they've had the chance to explore various fields outside of academia, including music and art. To further promote learning and collaboration of people with different skill sets, the new school should create an electronic student database where students can post bulletins about their projects and request help from students from different fields in order to create a project that would incorporate skills from different talents.
The new school also values the concept of innovation. To quote John Tate, who was the chairman of the Interior Design Department at Parsons School of Design in 1969, the central concern for design is man. Therefore, the beginning design core of Parsons' curriculum is based on man, the eccentrics of man, and his relationships to the things that surround him. Through historical analysis and research, the student examines what has happened before his age and what is happening now so that he can begin to understand the promise of the future. This is an example of innovation towards a philosophy of design education, which begins to open up the discussion about innovation in the history of the new school. Other innovations can be seen through the rebranding of the new school, specifically with the transition from the shield logo to the graffiti logo, which represents the relocation of the new school from Chelsea to the East Village. Within the next 10 years, a suggestion of innovation through rebranding is almost guaranteed, as it comes with the growth of the university in New York City.
So the new school has always prided itself on being a forward-thinking and progressive institution. However, it lacks a sense of collegiate pride. For the school to come together, it needs to establish an identity. By offering more extracurricular activities, organizations, clubs, and athletics, students will better associate themselves with the university and not just their division. Since the new school doesn't have a campus in the traditional sense, participation in activities will foster teamwork, build school pride, and spark enthusiasm into the university's community. These activities outside the classroom will provide another space where artists, designers, musicians, and intellectuals can meet, tying back to the university's core values and mission of being progressive and developing students that bring positive, innovative change to the world.
Although the new school has always been a very untraditional college, it has always been dedicated to the academics and education of its students. One of the things that the new school lacks is better facilities and a campus. Of course, not having a campus is one of the things that makes us so untraditional and great. However, when I was looking through the scrapbooks, one of the things that I noticed was that there would be all these interesting artists. For example, Martha Graham once came to the new school. We do have interesting people who come to the new school today, yet there seems to be a lack of communication between the divisions. This is probably because we do not have a central campus. Each school is so divided up. In my interview with Gary Vina, who teaches at the New School for Drama, I found out that he had no idea about any of the theater productions happening at Lang, even though Fefu and Her Friends, which was the senior work, was actually happening at the New School for Drama. There was no indication that it was happening there in that school whatsoever. So besides sort of fostering a sense of a community through a campus, however untraditional it might be, the building that is now being built might help contribute to this. Another example would be the Lang Cafe, which is, I think, targeted mostly towards Lang students, expanding something like this to the New School Cafe, making it available and accessible to students in every division, even the Manus students who are so far from us.
To expand on that, engagement with the surrounding environment and building a larger community of new school students in general, rather than specific schools, has long been important to the students of the new school. In Alvin Johnson's notes on the Benton murals and Orozco murals, we can see that Clemente Orozco provided this sort of thought-provoking setting where students could not just, come together and drink coffee, but they could discuss what they were learning and hearing during their lectures. Although that space is not currently available to the public, But we do have the Lang Courtyard and the Lang Cafe, which had been mentioned in New School bulletins since the 1950s, and it's still standing as a space for students to come together and discuss outside of an academic setting. So as the completion of the new building approaches, perhaps we would propose to include a similar space for all schools, students of any of the 7 schools of the new school, to come together to discuss issues outside of a classroom setting. And though the future is entirely impossible to predict, it is safe to say that with its foundations in progressive learning, engagements with its surrounding environments, and a strong student community, the new school will continue to grow and maintain itself as a school always striving to employ innovative ways to educate and be educated.
Thank you. The next presentation, called Redefining Boundaries, Improving the University Through Systems of Engagement, will be presented by Mary Beth Bachand.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming. My name is Mary Beth, and I'm a senior in the BFA Fashion Design program. The new school aims to be an influential international university that nurtures, educates, and challenges students of all ages through experimental curricula and with educators who promote forward thinking. It is dedicated to creativity, innovation, public engagement, and critical thinking, while also working to empower and prepare students in interactive and intimate class structures without discrimination. The new school strives to maintain fluid and contemporary with times and diverse, yet also community-based. Over the next 10 years, we hope to literally redefine the boundaries of the new school. And we want to do this through improving social systems of engagement. We dream of a university where our education, friendships, and community building do not end after school. The hope is that a vast, strong, and active alumni association would greatly aid us in our careers as we all aim to help each other succeed. This wouldn't just affect graduates of the new school, it would pour hope into the prospective and current students, hope that we are the most forward-thinking school that cares deeply about the reality we all face when we graduate. Building relationships and networking is essential for students in a university. Students exposed to a networked environment in school will be better prepared for future jobs. The new school could benefit from improving relationships between alumni and the student body through better career service and alumni relations. Having events with alumni and students could allow for social interaction or creating an online database that allows students and alumni to post possible job opportunities. There should be yearly events to celebrate alumni, similar to reunions, but with multiple graduating classes, and events for young freshmen and alumni when freshmen are choosing their majors and would like to hear from people in different fields. There is clearly separation between the 7 schools within the new school. There's a lack of opportunities for students from different majors to engage with each other. In combination with events held, an online database could be created to bring together all of the departments and majors. Students would be able to post for help. For example, students in fashion could post that they need photographers for their fashion shoots. Students that are selling their books and getting rid of things at the end of the year. Also, students needing advice about a different field or something they have of interest. Social networking would be valuable in connecting the new school in an interactive and forward-thinking way. Organization is imperative to keep this university running smoothly. The new school could benefit in many different areas with an emphasis on organization. It seems the new school has short-staffed advisors. From Lang to Parsons, students feel that advisors are not well equipped to guide students effectively. With more advisors, each student could be given the time, attention, and service they deserve. The new school is open and sensitive to change. By listening to faculty, students, and administration concerns, the school is always changing to adapt to these needs. However, in order to see if a change is working, there must be enough time for the change to be implemented. When a decision is made to implement a change, there should be a set time period in which the change must be in place. If we never let an idea or decision grow, it is hard to tell whether it works or not. There should be a common place for students from the university to gather. New York City acts as a campus for the new school. This is an advantage for our students and was part of the reason why I decided to come here. However, the school could benefit by also having a common place for all the individuals in the schools to congregate. It's exciting to think of this new building and all the possibilities that it has to offer, and we hope that some of these different suggestions could be poured into that. So, thank you.
Okay, time now for the sticky school. Which will be introduced to us by Jordan Hahn and Hamid actually, Paige.
Yeah. Actually, yeah.
Is Jordan also? No.
No.
Okay, so Paige Weber and Hamid Pellet.
Yeah. So, just start out so we see we have 8 minutes happening. It's really nice to see everybody here. Usually we have a morning class of like 20 people, barely woken up, very shocked. So this is wonderful. I'll give you just a basic start. As far as I knew, when I heard about the new school for the first time, people told me it's a jazz school, it's 2 floors, and that's all I knew about it. When I enrolled to the new school, I thought it was 1 building. Imagine my surprise. After that, thinking it was just 2 floors or just a design school, I thought it was a young school. Very new department because the jazz department is only 25 years old. And then I got to a ULAC called the New School Century. So that was the biggest change. So I'm just thinking what I'm going to learn about next semester. That's going to be remarkable. So during this semester and during this class, I've learned about fascinating people that pass by the school. This school, much like New York, has been an intersection for everything, which is why I moved here personally. I'm originally from Israel. I'm a musician, and I'm here as a jazz student. My major is jazz performance. And the people I had my biography about for this semester, for example, was Piotr Zakas, an amazing interior designer, which would be something that I would have never thought that I would encounter here in New School. I would like to tell you one thing before we start explaining the wonderful name we chose for our group. I would use a quote from an interview I did with the head of the administrative program in the jazz department, Martin Mueller. And we finished our interview and our conversation with the quote saying that we always try here in school to be on the beat, to be updated. In a place like New York, it's impossible, but we try. And the very fact that we try to be updated on beat all the time is what keeps this place from being a museum, basically. So that's the biggest virtue of the new school. Referring to the name, the sticky school, well, the sticky term is a term given by Bill Hurst, one of the psychology faculty here. And the point about it is sticky is just a narrative. It doesn't have to be the right narrative. It doesn't have to be exact, but it's an easy version or a line to follow by and remember. And that's what we found out about the new school, where we had a lot of facts that we knew for certain about people studying here that were not true. And very, very unique timeline that is the real history of New School, yet not many people know it. Now, in our work, we decided to give an overview of the school in 6 main levels or main topics. We talked about the involvement with global challenges that the new school attends here. Now, many of you heard about a university in exile, which is one of the finest and more remarkable examples of what the school is capable of as far as the personal contribution and educational contribution that the school have brought to the U.S., as well as the personal contribution of saving lives, literally, of Jewish scholars and other European scholars in Europe during World War II. Another aspect was, and that's a very personal agenda that I took here, and I will elaborate more about it, is the knowledge and experience that all new school students should acquire. I'll regard that to the interview that I had with Martin as well. What we study in the jazz department is not just studying the history or the roots of the music, but also being practitioners, knowing your craft And by the second you're graduating from school, or even during that time, as you can see by many of the great jazz players here in the department, you are a practitioner, you know your craft. I think that that ability should be kept as far as go for students being aware of their rights, students being aware of their field, the people in their profession, basic financial aspects that they should be aware of. Students should know how to write a check, how to protest, what to protest about. And we see that the new school is being one of the more dominant voices in the Occupy movement. But at the same time, if we have more awareness, then we'll know what should we protest about. That was one of the main issues and comments against the Occupy movement, that we had a very big voice here complaining, but the topic wasn't that clear, wasn't that definitive. So what we aspire to is to having every graduate student understand his rights and his craft better. Now I'm going to have Paige talk about her field, and we'll continue and tell you more about the suggestion we have for the school 10 years from now.
Hi, I'm Paige. I'm an illustration major. I'm a sophomore at Parsons. I guess, where did you leave off? No, sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay, I'll talk about, I guess, the section that I wrote about, which was social research, which was one of the kind of founding elements of the new school when it began. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard today a lot about isolation between all of the colleges. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about that, but I did talk about in my section that obviously the physical isolation between the campuses, but also claiming New York City as a campus as a whole is kind of ambitious, I think, for a college in general, because it's huge. So I guess something I proposed was, I read about Jane Jacobs through the class, and I think what the article was, The Death of the Life of Great American Cities. And she talked a lot about a sidewalk community, and I think since, yes, the school, Manus is far away, but most of the school is in Greenwich Village, so I think kind of a sidewalk community of the area would be a good solution, like for unification of the new school between all of the colleges. So, yeah.
All right, we'd like to finish off with the 5-minute suggestions we had here. So this is our humble vision to make the new school a better new school 10 years from now. You can see the 3 of them already on your pamphlet. The first one, which is not surprising to hear from a student, is lower tuition. We'd like to see a program that basically try to aim to make the tuition lower by 20%, at least by 10 years from now. I think that's very crucial because what we have in new school is the diversity. We have students from everywhere in the world, but we should also have students from different socio-economical backgrounds, like we had in the new school history with the GI Bill. Very crucial point, in my opinion. Another thing, which is a very good thing for the new school as well, is having more courses, and this was a common suggestion that we saw here, that will incorporate students. Basically, we have amazing students from a lot of fields here that can do so many different things together. I think so by combining them, we can gain a lot more for the school reputation and bigger project as well. It could be a final project or a final semester project. That's another offer. More artistic courses that will use these things. Being aware of those rights that we mentioned. We want to make the connection to the city stronger and more dominant. And last, we thought about adding more undergraduate divisions to the Milano School for the drama. So hopefully 10 years from now, we'll see some of that starting to happen. Thank you.
And our final presentation, To the Living Spirit, will be presented by Miles Corman.
I'm Miles. I'm a junior at Lang. I wanted to thank my group and Robin, our discussion section leader. So while I don't know how appropriate this is, I'm going to start this presentation with a bit of personal anecdote. When I graduated high school in 2009, like many in my class, I didn't have a particular vision of what I longed for in life. I did know one thing. Unlike many of my peers, I would not be immediately enrolling in a four-year university. My parents supported me in this decision, and although I reluctantly visited a few schools, Eugene Lang being one of them, I decided to enroll at the International People's College in Helsingør, Denmark. IPC is a Danish folk high school which emphasizes lifelong learning, something I would soon come to know as a cornerstone of the New School's philosophy. At IPC, I studied with students of all ages and of all backgrounds. As an English speaker, I was in the minority. But one day I had a change of heart. Towards the end of my term at IPC, I had haphazardly started an application for Lang, though with no real intention of finishing it. I distinctly remember sitting at a computer, lazily browsing articles on the New School, and stumbling on a more thorough account of the university in exile. Simply put, I was enthralled, and I was inspired by what I found. Part of the draw was the history and the conviction presented through a historical narrative committed to academic freedom. It was epitomized by the university in exile and, in particular, Thomas Mann, a German novelist and social critic, and his story of the New School's living spirit. Mann recalled how the Nazi regime had torn down a placard at the University of Heidelberg, which read, "To the Living Spirit," an illustration of academic freedom. This inscription, unbelievable as it seems, has been removed from the building, Mann said to a room full of New School faculty members. Thus, the regime itself has declared that there is, for the time being, no home for the living spirit in Germany's universities. Now I suggest that you faculty take these words and make them your motto to indicate that the living spirit has found a home in this country, being the United States. The New School had been a refuge to those in time of need, but more importantly, by sheltering and protecting hundreds of academics, had preserved academic freedom and taken a stand for what it believed in. The New School, unlike other universities, many rampant with anti-Semitism in the 1930s, would take action. The New School for Social Research unofficially adopted this motto of "To the Living Spirit." After reading this, I decided that I would go to the New School and finish my application the next day. It was the only institution I applied to, and I was proud to say so. Now, 3 years after my enrollment, my group considered titling our presentation on the legacy of the New School, Myth or Legend. In the 90 years since the founding of the school, this living spirit has been diminished, but we also look at this question with a glimmer of hope. What we once were, we can be again, but today what we are as an institution and a legacy is a shell of its former self. The New School was founded with the intention of escaping the ivory tower of higher education. Columbia University in the first 2 decades of the 20th century was controlled by a small portion of trustees and bowed to outside influence. Our distinguished founders recognized this when Columbia fired some of its faculty members for refusing to sign a loyalty pact to the United States government and defected, vowing to form an institution which would teach from the ground up instead of the top down. This institution was born, some would say, in a rebellion against the powers of oppression of thoughts and opinion, but also against clouded bureaucracy and the misuse of power. Faculty and students would control the institution, rather than deans, presidents, or other administrators. In a May 11, 1918 editorial titled "An Independent College of Political Science," The Nation magazine described how this radical idea would be implemented. The faculty will elect the Board of Trustees and will also appoint and dismiss its own members, wrote The Nation. In other words, the professors will have complete self-government and will be responsible to nobody but their colleagues and to the truth. While the school will have a secretary to attend to registration and collect fees, the usual administrative machinery will be reduced to a vanishing point. The projectors believe it mostly irrelevant to their purpose. Not only were faculty to spearhead the decision-making process, but students would also have significant representation. In 1921, the Evening Post reported that 2 members of the student council, the New School Student Council, were elected as representatives, describing a trustees meeting as a clearinghouse for ideas from 3 points of view. Since then, the university has changed quite a bit. The number of trustees has fluctuated and administrations have changed over time. But one element has remained a constant in recent years: 0 student or faculty representatives. Obviously, the model described by The Nation was not sustainable for an institution that would like to last more than a handful of years. But the sentiment instilled in those words carries a significance greater than just ink on paper. The late Clara Meyer, a dean at the New School and secretary of the Board of Trustees, said that it takes vitality to inform in contemporary issues. For the most part, we have always held a kind of vitality, whether that be erecting a structure unseen in Greenwich Village in 1931, which contained reportedly the first pillarless auditorium, giving voice to those who have been marginalized, say women in the first quarter of the 20th century, or African Americans in the 1960s, or reaching over an ocean to protect the lives of threatened scholars. I've spent much of my time in the last few weeks browsing through the recently preserved and digitized editions of the New School Bulletin, thanks to our friends at the Kellen Design Archives. Those from the 1940s have particularly interested me. Alvin Johnson, the university's first director, wrote editorials in each bulletin to broadcast the school's position on a slew of issues throughout the world. Johnson wrote about the dangers of xenophobia towards Germans in America, questioned what the United States and the international community should do with Germany once the war inevitably came to an end. And more so, he urged his students at the university to look at problems at home. In a 1944 edition, Johnson wrote an empowering thesis about the race crisis in America, titled "Where America is Vulnerable, the Negro Problem." This is not social discrimination, Johnson wrote, implying that economic discrimination lay at the core of race problems in America. This, not social discrimination, lies at the bottom of accumulated frictions that produce race riots. And race riots are easily fomented and are utilizable as arguments on the failure of democratic government and the necessity for strong government of the self-chosen few, the fascists. Just 20 years later, speakers such as Martin Luther King Jr., Roy Wilkins, Charles Abrams, and James Farmer would take the stage at what is now the Tishman Auditorium, just 4 days before the passing of the Civil Rights Act. That's some of them, that would be. Students at the New School would take part in seminars before the lectures with these speakers, though until this year, only 1 or 2 people at the institution could tell you about the tapes of the lectures existing at the school. Of the 16 lectures and Q&A sections that followed, only 3.5 tapes were recovered. The missing half, Martin Luther King's lecture. As the university approaches its centennial, it's imperative that our history be realized and protected. Currently, over 90% of the New School's funding comes from student tuition. We do not contain a school archive. Much of our untouched history remains rotting in boxes, nor do we contain a proper library. A little discretion is given to students, and little discretion is given to students as to where funding is prioritized. One of the most defining moments of this semester was when we learned that in the 1970s and continuing until the 1990s, the papers of the University in Exile were given from the New School to a scholar from SUNY Albany. The New School's librarian at the time feared for their care and gave the papers away so that they would be properly stored and preserved. With the massive university center nearing completion at 65 Fifth Avenue, this cry for reflection and protection is even louder. There is a great shift nearing the university, and we must commit ourselves to preserving our past so we can better understand our future. We are the New School, and we must always be looking to innovate, but that does not mean neglecting our past or casting aside our legacy. Clara Meyer, who I mentioned earlier, is noted as one of the most significant figures in the New School's history, though almost all traces of her have been wiped from existence. I would say more about her, but there's not much to be known. She was asked to leave the school by Henry David, the New School's 5th president, after he reportedly felt threatened by her amount of influence on the board. David wished for a more business-like approach compared to what he called Meyer's mom-and-pop style. David was soon fired after the decision, but Meyer would never return to the New School. She died in California some years later, and her name is hardly repeated in the halls of the institution she committed her life to. In the 1960s, when Jane Jacobs launched her campaign to preserve the streets of Greenwich Village in the brooding shadow of Robert Moses, her critics chastised her, saying that if the streets were kept small and if the village were to be preserved, it would be inevitably absorbed by the leering metropolis that surrounded. Jacobs stood her ground to protect that vitality, that spirit of the community that she loved. It is the same with the New School. Even in the face of adversity, of crushing debts, and a trembling economy, we can preserve what we hold dear. Part of this assignment asked what we would like the New School to look like in 10 years. We came to the conclusion that we don't know, or rather, we don't want to set any boundaries for progress. To ensure this, we urge increased student and faculty participation, both on the Board of Trustees and financial and curriculum committees, and a commitment to social critique and continued cultural stimulation. The spirit of the school is the most important. The New School is bound to change, it's bound to morph with the world around it. That's what the institution was founded on. Though our only concern, our only hope, is that when we do change, we pay homage to those who came before us, and always ensure that that living spirit is among us.
Those are terrific. We should teach this course again. Could we have another round of applause for all the students, including those who didn't come up here and present, but right.
First of all, that was tremendous. You should teach the course again. So, we both, I think, while we listened, were scribbling away a number of the comments that were said. And, I think at one point Tim leaned over to me and said, well, let's just put them all in charge of doing, changing the school. So, which is not a bad idea at all. Not a bad idea at all. I'd noticed, a number of themes that came up, and which I think are very important. I think themes that we, the deans, others around really care about. And probably one of the biggest ones was just cross-divisional, taking advantage of the opportunities that are there that sometimes because of the different, histories, cultures, administrative structures of the different divisions, it makes it very difficult for students to take advantage of, as it does for faculty. I think both Tim and I think there's tremendous gains to be gotten from what some of you said, which was, I may be at Parsons, but I'd like to take a course, I'd like to take a few more courses in Lang. And I think until it's been very difficult to do. Hopefully this coming year, we have the timetable at least coordinated, so it make it a little more easy physically to do it. But again, it's often a cultural thing, whether it's in advising or other places, and just the way people think about it to take advantage of that. A second theme I heard was the emphasis on learning by doing, which is an old John Dewey concept. Some people phrase it that way. Other people phrased it as participating in the society around them, doing projects, solving problems that way. And again, I think that's really at the heart of what the New School has done and should continue to do more and more of. There were some more, more prosaic or mundane kinds of concerns. Administrative organization. That is, I get lots of emails myself from people who have frustrations with trying to get something done, and that's something we really need to continue to work on. The advising system too. I think that's something that's been, again, different in different divisions. It's handled in different ways. I don't think it does good service to the students, and we are right now looking at all those and trying to pull those resources together to have a much more coherent advising system. I think that actually has some impact too on your ability to think about your own, expanding your own education while you're here. And finally, there were a couple of requests about having a campus or things like that. One thing that I would say about that is that, because the New School is not a traditional university, that was another theme that came up. We're not a traditional university. We shouldn't aspire to be a traditional university. And we're not going to have a campus in the traditional sense. But what we can have is a social campus, a social commonality. And I think, as many people said, space is at a premium. I think the new building will be a good step in that direction, but we got to continue to look for other ways of building that social community. Some people have very creative suggestions about using technology to do that. I think at the end of the day that for a lot of the issues that we face at the New School, I think being innovative, and I sort of think that's at the core of what we do, is trying to come up with new solutions, questioning the status quo, trying to be very creative about how do you solve problems in all sorts of different ranges. We ought to turn that on ourselves and not simply copy what other universities do. Turn that on ourselves and say, okay, how can we do what we do more innovatively and creatively? So, I mean, those are some of the themes I pulled out of it. You want to add some, Tim?
Sure. Very similarly, I mean, obviously the dominant theme was this sense of integration, but I heard it in lots of different ways. From the ability of taking courses in different divisions was one theme, but I think there's almost a stronger yearning to be part of the whole rather than just the piece that you may. Most students have walked through a door, be it Parsons, be it Fashion, be it Lang, be it a program or a division or a department or whatever you actually first bonded to or understood the institution to be. The jazz example was great in that way. But then discovering that there's this whole institution here and a deep yearning to find that singular community, a singular identity, a more integrated experience, a community of students and faculty, administrators, working, whether it's through understanding our history better, knowing what you're coming in to be part of, whether it means participating in governance in different ways, whether it means the sidewalk community that was being talked about at one point, which I thought was great, and Jane Jacobs coming up a few times, so I kept imagining we better get some New School stoops happening around the place so people can hang out on those, which Parsons, Sheila Johnson Center had a little attempt on those windowsills, which actually do get used in the summer pretty well. But more spaces like that where students can hang out and have serendipitous kind of encounters with each other and with and the community around us. If we're going to be plonk smack in the middle of New York City, then we are part of that community as well. So this kind of sense of radiating communities, more integrated communities, strengthened sense of history and purpose that everybody can kind of sign up to, regardless of which particular program or experience you came in here to share. It was what I took away as a strong theme running through. I guess if I was to look forward, if you were to rerun the class again, one of the things that is always a dilemma when you're trying to wrestle with some of the pragmatics, particularly at a programmatic level, is there's lots of we want more, we want more, we want more. I heard the word more, can we have more of this and more of that and more of the other thing and more of the other thing, which is great. But then getting down to figuring out what are the trade-offs? What would you like to have less of in order to have more of? How would we work that out? What parts of a program or educational experience would you give up on in order to have more of this integrated experience? Would be something I think would be super helpful to us, because that is a huge problem in education, I have to say, is that we just keep adding year after year after year, and it ends up killing education because you're just adding stuff. And education is much more than the stuff, as I think all of you have pointed out. It's about being in your communities and learning from each other and peer-to-peer and all of that stuff. So thinking about how that would be super helpful for us, for me anyway. Okay, but it was fantastic. I super enjoyed it, and I thought they were really, really informative, and we have our script. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We actually hope that people will respond. So perhaps students have some ideas to what we could give up to Tim's questions, or anybody in the audience, not specific to students whatsoever, but either questions for particular people or about particular issues would be great. Oh, right. David, please. We're hoping to capture it in the microphone, so there's somebody who's coming around with it as well.
I just wanted to add a big bravo for the whole thing, but also for something that hasn't yet been commented on, which is the seriousness with which all of you took the history of the new school. I mean, I thought you're holding our feet to the fire about the present and the future in really good ways that David and Tim have responded to, but I thought it was very moving how engaged and sometimes inspired you were by our history, and that kind of, I think, grounds the thinking in a wonderful way.
Which leads me,
please,
to ask, is there a plan in the new building's ground floor or main entrance floor to have a legacy plaque or legacy corner or some kind of memorial written that reminds all the visitors who walk through the doors who has been there originally and who in the waves, the two separate waves, and some magical names that should go up there so that casual people, even coming in from the community who are here for a public event, will always know and be reminded, and the students will always know and be reminded every day that some pretty remarkable human beings helped to start the school. And I think since we're building a whole building, maybe we could find a corner or a wall and write something.
That's a wonderful suggestion, and David and Tim know more than I do about the new building. But I just want to point out that, the number of us who have been here over years have, one of the things I think Mark commented to me and noticed was that in the 16th Street building, there is the plaque to the University in Exile on some random floor that is a little bit lost, that used to be at the base of the graduate faculty building, actually, at 65 Fifth Avenue, and now is a little lost, I would say. So I think that's a wonderful point, actually.
Certainly
Get that on
is.
tape.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's a great idea. The first part I said there's no plan now. But I do think it's a great idea. And, you know, the point of the new building is really to bring the entire community together. So it's not devoted to a particular division or a particular school or a particular activity. It doesn't have a lot of offices. It's had very few offices. It has classroom and educational space, and it has meeting space for faculty and for students. And but it also, I think, is going to be the center, which we really haven't had for quite a few years. It's going to be the center of the entire institution, which really makes that possible. It means we don't have to keep that plaque on which floor, 9, 10, 11, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, this is just another question for the tuition, basically. I think we got an email from you, actually, about the tuition being raised by 2% this upcoming semester. From a student point of view, just to share, you know, my input for it, studying abroad is a very big project. There are a lot of musicians in Israel, especially jazz musicians, that studying in the United States and in places like the New School is a very big, important step for them. But for a lot of people, it's impossible. By the time I'll be done with this degree next semester, it's gonna be a very big price that will be paid by me. Despite we were given jazz scholarships and we are receiving aid from the school, but the prices, alongside with the prices of living in New York, are always getting higher. Is there any attempt to regulate that and maybe try to cutting the prices down instead of raising them? I know there's a set bar among schools, though. That's one thing. I know there is a set bar among schools. It's not just the New School that's raising that, right?
You know, it's a problem. Tim pointed out the problem earlier in higher education generally. There was a very conscious attempt this year to keep the tuition increase as low as we possibly could, given our expenses. I think it was your group that suggested a 20% reduction tuition. Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually a very interesting concept to think about. And what would it take to actually do that? You know, what would you give up, or how would you? I mean, there are different ways of doing it. What would you give up in order to achieve 20%? I firmly believe that in the future there are going to be schools. I think it's going to tend to be new schools, not new schools in our sense of 100 years old. New school, new school, that will try to do exactly what you're saying. Have tuition that's 20 or 30% below, maybe even 50% below what the other existing private institutions are. But they're going to have a very different look to them in terms of the contact you have with faculty, how things work. We have. I think that's actually very hard. It'd be a very interesting exercise. I've tried to do it myself. What would the new school look like if you said, okay, let's have lower tuition by 20%? And I think that's a great exercise for the class, actually, because that you come to grips with all the different trade-offs that you have to make it. Again, I don't have an answer to overall the higher education problem in the United States, and it's actually coming to the rest of the world as governments stop supporting institutions of higher ed. We're not alone. We're not alone in that, and I think we've gotten to the point where at the high private ends, we're pricing ourselves out of students in many ways. I mean, it used to be that people could scrape together, even for the expensive private institutions, enough money through loans and things to put their usually their kids or family members through college. I think that's getting tougher and tougher, and I think a lot of schools around the country are seeing that in terms of enrollment too, in what directions are going. So.
Hello, my name is Gerard Hemmerly. I am a student in the class, and it has been a great course. I'm a returning student. I was a student here in the early 70s. I want to make a comment firstly about the legacy and continuing to broaden awareness of the legacy of the new school to the students currently and moving forward through the next 10 years. I think to put a legacy into a corner is a mistake. The legacy needs to be pervasive throughout the entirety of the school environment. photographs, artworks, pictures of literature, things that really signify the contributions that substantiated the development of the new school experience. It needs to be pervasive. Yeah, we need more money to do that, right? So I don't know how that's going to happen, but somehow let's believe it. Have hope, things are possible. My other remark is a question. We've been asked to envision the new school over the next 10 years. I imagine that that is a practice that happens among faculty, administration, board of trustees, board of governors, whoever else is involved. Is there a 10-year vision for this school, or is it kind of nondescript?
Well, I think that's what we're working on right now, and I think it's taking shape. I don't know if you read my installation speech last September. I was beginning to try to outline at least where Tim and I think the general direction needs to go for the school, and it's trying to take advantage of all the strengths across, and trying to take advantage of some historical strengths as well, which is in always being questioning, it's in being publicly engaged. But I think that's a process that's going on right now. It'll continue to go on at various different levels. So the short answer is we have a general idea. The second short answer is we don't know specifically. But that's where we need your help. And Frank, I think the idea of challenging a class, we sometimes, when we meet with say the University Senate members, we ask these kinds of questions. But the idea of challenging a group of students in this kind of setting to do this, and we should do it a number of times, and maybe in other settings, is a very positive. Because as you say, I think faculty think a lot about the future. Certainly, we as the leaders of the institution think about the future. But I think just sitting here for me gave me a feel of what people are thinking. We don't all agree on every last thing, but at least I have a sense of what the students would think would be valuable in the next 10 years to the direction the university ought to go.
Yes, we're giving them the papers of all of you. So
I was actually going to ask for them. I didn't know I was getting them or not.
Yeah. Here we go. Peter, thanks.
I think it's a good place for me to segue. I feel my head is spinning. I in the university's communications and marketing function, which addresses so many of the issues of this terrific class, and I really credit all the students and Mark and Julie for putting it together. And also, don't be surprised if you see some of your language on the website in a couple of hours. Thanks. Miles is on his game, charging us again with being myth makers, and I appreciate that corrective, but I also want to push back, because as I heard all of you speak, I was trying to imagine the same conversation, the same course taking place at any other institution in the country where you'd really engage the history. Now Harvard and Yale can spend hours and hours talking about, there would be in a pine-paneled room, 2 or 3 students with an archivist would sit and talk about the important legacy of the institution. It would not involve students addressing issues that are coming out of the headlines right now. And the Faulkner line, the past is never dead. It's never even past. That's very much present as you have this conversation. Other universities would do this. It would be the history of agriculture in the state. It would be all kinds of things which we generally don't dwell on too often and which aren't part of our contemporary curiosity. But at the New School, it isn't a myth. It isn't a myth to say that you're going to school because you've made deliberate choices, because you care about the history of the institution you're attending, and because even when you graduate, you may not even know what you're going to do 6 or 8 weeks from now. When I graduated from college, I didn't know until, maybe a year ago, what I was going to do with my life. But I think you've been at an institution where that perspective is not only warranted, but you get the richness of being ambivalent for a long period of time while you're here. And I know it doesn't sound like I'm complimenting the New School when I say that, but I genuinely feel it. And I there's no final word to this. I just appreciate having listened. And again, call your copyright lawyers because we're going to take all of your language.
Anybody else? Maybe that's a good point at which to end and to invite everybody over for some food and drink and informal conversation. And thank you all, especially the students. Thank you.